Evan drove with his usual calm precision, the kind that made it easy to trust him without question. Claire rested her head against the cool glass of the window, watching the Pennsylvania scenery smear into streaks of gray as a gentle rain began falling. Mason sat in the back, idly tapping on the cooler they had brought, quietly humming along to a static-filled song on the old car radio. Road trips had always been part of their lives since their college days in Pittsburgh, and they had anticipated this weekend to be just another short adventure before life tugged them toward separate directions, Evan heading to Chicago for a new job, Claire preparing to move to Toronto for her design internship, and Mason readying himself for a marketing position in Boston. They weren't fleeing from anything, but a subtle ache lingered, the awareness that moments spent together were becoming rarer. The rain intensified, and without warning, the car jerked and slowed, steam curling from beneath the hood as Evan pulled to the shoulder. No signal, no nearby towns, only the storm stretching endlessly around them. At first, frustration and laughter filled the silence, jokes about classic road trip mishaps masking their unease. After walking along the slick road for some time, a dim neon glow appeared in the distance, a motel, its sign flickering like a fading heartbeat. The Pine Ridge Motel, weathered and unassuming. It exuded the sort of welcome only desperation could accept. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and worn carpet. An elderly man at the desk explained the storm had knocked out part of the power, but luckily one room remained. He handed them a metal key with a blue plastic tag. The single room forced them close together, an arrangement they had done countless times during college trips. Yet tonight, the space felt heavier, the storm outside amplifying a strange intimacy. Claire noticed their shoulders brushing as they moved, the small closeness stirring warmth she couldn't immediately understand. Evan carried their bags with steady steps, glancing back at them in quiet vigilance, while Mason stayed close to Claire, bumping her gently, a playful touch lingering longer than usual. The room itself was simple, a queen bed, a threadbare couch, a wooden table, a lone lamp, and a rain-streaked window. Stepping inside, silence fell. The storm pressed against the walls, wind tapping like invisible fingers, and Claire sensed an unexpected weight, the awareness of her two closest friends surrounding her. Evan placed the bags down with deliberate care and sat at the edge of the bed, his posture steady but distant, lost in thoughts he did not share. Mason wandered toward the small desk, flipping through old takeout menus, his usual humor muted. Eyes lifting to Claire intermittently, tentative and observant, Claire tried to dismiss the sensation, attributing it to exhaustion and the unusual circumstances. Yet the room seemed smaller, the air warmer, charged with an unspoken tension. Emotions shifted subtly among them, delicate as sand under a rising tide. They were adults, able to handle a night in a cramped motel, yet something intangible hinted that this evening would not remain ordinary. As lights flickered with the unstable power, Claire noticed Evan and Mason, each lost in thought. Not about the broken car or ruined plans, but about her. A quiet acknowledgement lingered. They had never been merely friends. Rain hammered against the window, echoing the growing tension. The queen bed in the center and the couch along the wall seemed to press the three of them into proximity. Evan sat at the bed's edge, hands clasped, gaze downward, serious in a way that weighed on the room. Mason reclined on the couch, attempting to inject levity by noting crooked lamps and faded wallpaper, but even his humor lacked its usual brightness. Claire moved toward the window, tracing raindrops with her eyes and watching their reflections mingle in the dim light. Closeness that had always felt familiar now felt fragile, charged with subtle anticipation. They began talking softly, recalling college days, past road trips, and shared jokes. But the conversations gradually took on new weight, imbued with intimacy never present before. Evan's voice trembled, slightly recounting a memory where Claire had comforted him, while Mason's eyes softened, recalling her support during his own struggles. The room grew warmer, the rain outside a distant heartbeat. Claire sat at the edge of the bed between them, hesitant yet drawn to the proximity. Each glance and gesture carried unspoken emotion. Mason brushing a stray lock of hair from his face with deliberate slowness, Evan's gaze finding hers with steady intensity. Their laughter, when it came, was tender, layered with emotions unspoken. The storm softened into a drizzle, shadows shifting as the flickering lamp illuminated their faces in fleeting patterns. Claire felt emotions radiating from both men, years of restraint dissolving under the isolation and intimacy of shared space. She longed to ask the questions pressing against her chest, yet words felt inadequate. Mason exhaled softly, a release beyond mere breath, admitting quietly that he cared more than he should. The confession hit with the subtle force of a sudden gust, unsettling the careful balance they had maintained for years. Evan froze momentarily, processing, before speaking in a steady voice layered with emotion. He had not been the only one keeping silent. The room hummed with tension. Every glance loaded, every movement meaningful. Claire felt herself inching toward Mason as he shifted nervously, yet Evan's unwavering gaze grounded her. The space was intimate, not uncomfortable, a mix of longing, fear, and recognition that nothing between them would remain the same. Memories intertwined with emotions, creating a fragile arena where denial was impossible. The night, the storm, the shared space, it reflected the quiet truths they had never spoken. Claire felt the words hovering, aware that speaking could alter everything, while Evan and Mason lingered in the same delicate moment. The room seemed to inhale with them, and Claire understood this night would mark a turning point. Friendship was bending towards something deeper, something they had all silently acknowledged but never named. Everything that was unfolding felt measured, intentional rather than impulsive. Outside, the storm had all but passed, leaving only the faint whisper of rain tracing the motel window. Time seemed to slow, as if the world beyond the walls had paused to give them this suspended moment. Claire's mind raced, emotions swirling in a blend of thrill and fear, as if she were standing at the edge of an unseen precipice, staring down at possibilities she hadn't dared imagine. The three of them remained in quiet, the silence almost tactile. Every heartbeat seemed amplified, carrying the thrill and danger of honesty. Any word spoken now could alter the equilibrium forever. And yet, Claire felt it clearly. They had crossed some invisible threshold. Friendship had begun bending toward something else, something unspoken, fragile, yet undeniable. This night, electric and delicate, would linger in their memories, reshaping how they perceived one another and the futures that awaited them beyond the motel walls dot by midnight. The storm had given way to soft gray light, the first whispers of dawn creeping across the horizon. Claire lingered near the window, watching the clouds part and sunlight seep through, carrying both relief and an anxious flutter she could not quell. The motel remained quiet, punctuated only by the occasional creak of settling wood and the faint scent of rain and cleaning pine lingering in the air. Evan approached her slowly, each step deliberate, careful not to disturb the fragile stillness of the moment. "I didn't want to pressure you," he said softly, voice steady but infused with unspoken weight. "But I can't pretend I don't feel something I've never been able to ignore." Claire turned, feeling her chest tighten at the sight of the reliable, calm friend she had always known now revealing a vulnerability that made her heart beat faster. Mason remained on the couch, giving them space, but his presence was palpable. Even from across the room, she could feel the depth of his emotions directed toward her, radiating quietly. The silence stretched, gentle yet heavy, as if the room itself held its breath. Claire's thoughts whirled, tangled with years of friendship. laughter, and shared memories, now reframed by the realization that both men harbored feelings she had never fully allowed herself to see before. "I care about both of you," she whispered, her voice trembling despite her efforts to stay composed. "I always have, but I need to understand what this means for us, for our friendship." Evan stepped back, giving her space, his eyes soft, steady, unwavering. Mason finally looked up, meeting her gaze with tenderness that made her chest ache. "Whatever you choose," he said, voice low and warm, "I'll respect it. I don't want to lose what we have." Tears prickled at Claire's eyes, a mixture of fear, longing, and the recognition of how much they had always meant to each other. Years of close friendship had never suggested the bond could stretch into something deeper. Yet here they were, teetering on the edge of a new and uncertain chapter. The room, small and worn, had transformed into a cocoon, holding only the three of them and the fragile, newly exposed emotions that had surfaced during the night. Claire inhaled deeply, steadying herself to honor the connection without breaking it. She understood that what had been confessed would alter everything. Evan's hand brushed the edge of the bed, a small, tentative gesture loaded with unspoken meaning. Mason shifted on the couch, straightening slowly, gaze unwavering, silently offering patience, understanding, and the quiet promise that he would stand by her regardless of the path she chose. The first rays of sunlight spilled into the room, soft and warm, illuminating the faces of the three friends. The night's weight, the vulnerability, and the courage it had taken to voice long-hidden truths were etched into every expression. Claire's pulse raced as she looked between Evan and Mason, feeling the pull of emotion, the mix of excitement and fear, and the undeniable fact that nothing about their friendship would ever be simple again. It had evolved into something more complex, richer, and infinitely precious, standing together in that small space. They were bound not only by years of shared experiences, but by the honesty and bravery of the night. A quiet warmth spread through Claire's chest, mingling hope with apprehension. Whatever came next, they would face it together, fortified by trust, care, and the deep connection that had always defined them. When they finally stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the faint scent of wet earth and the soft hum of the awakening world greeted them. Yet the three of them remained wrapped in the cocoon of what they had discovered inside the motel room, a beginning of something new, a delicate shift that would shape their future in ways still unseen. What had been a simple overnight stop became a turning point, a place where truths were faced, friendship tested, and bonds deepened as sunlight spread across the horizon. Claire realized that this night filled with quiet confessions, gentle glances, and unspoken understanding had changed everything. Their hearts would not return to what they had been, and though answers were still unknown, they had each other. That alone was enough to confront whatever lay ahead. The night in the motel had ended, but its echoes would linger, gentle, persistent, unforgettable, marking the start of a bond that could never be the same again.